it cut down our business of almost 50%.
As travelers' moods start to swing, as business starts to swing, we never know where this is going to end up.
Empty Chinatown restaurants, hotel rooms unused, taking stock of the impact that fears about the coronavirus is having on the GTA and looking at where things might be headed. First to Ottawa, where the federal government's new coronavirus cabinet committee held its first meeting this afternoon. Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland says she wants to assure Canadians that everything is possible is being done to keep them safe.
This response will be a national response. We have been working very closely with our provincial and territorial colleagues, and we will continue to do so, and we are united in our commitment to keep Canadians safe. I've been working closely, directly with the premiers for weeks. My colleague, Minister Haidu, has been working very closely with provincial ministers of health, and the Prime Minister and I are looking forward to meeting with the premiers in Ottawa next week, when this issue, of course, will be on the agenda. Merci beaucoup.
Canada's Chief Public Health Officer said there were no new cases of coronavirus reported today and no evidence of community transmission. All 33 infections in this country are related to travel or close contact with travelers. Around the world, concerns over the virus have led to a drop in tourism numbers, canceled conferences, and shuttered schools. So far, though, it hasn't led to any major cancellations or closures here in the GTA. But that doesn't mean it's not having an economic impact. Chris Glover joins us live tonight from the Metro Toronto Convention Centre. And Chris, the virus not stopping a major mining conference there this week.
No, that went ahead, but I did speak with one participant who's gone for the last couple years, and he said there were far fewer people here this time. So it is having a bit of an impact. It's just beginning, though, but we are seeing that toll spreading into different businesses across the city. Already feeling the pinch from so many empty tables, 30% of staff is on rotating 2-week vacation at this restaurant in Chinatown.
Virus really hurt our business, and it cut down our business of almost 50% to 60%.
Owner Charlie Lin says COVID-19 has stung, but nothing like the 2003 SARS outbreak. Back then, he was a waiter here and was put on vacation for a full month.
We couldn't close down the restaurant, but still we lost money.
Hey, Toronto!
In 2003, a concert headlined by international rock stars was needed after SARS. Things got so bad for Toronto tourism. Nothing like this is needed right now, says Ontario's finance minister.
It's early days yet, but certainly issues around supply chains, issues around tourism, and finally issues around consumer confidence are all things that we've been monitoring closely here.
2% more hotel rooms in Toronto's core are like this right now, idle. But the Hotel Association isn't concerned yet.
So obviously that's not so bad at this point in time, but we can't not be vigilant.
Just weeks away from the popular one-of-a-kind craft show, and organizers say it's on. So far, no events at Exhibition Place have been scaled back. CDI College's North York campus is closed for just today. The 24-hour caution comes after the spouse of an Iranian student tested positive for the virus.
There are some businesses that are really suffering, but there are some that there's absolutely no change at all.
We took a walk with the Chinatown BIA to see some of the 70 hand sanitizer dispensers now up at area businesses. So why are you taking the measures like with the hand sanitizer?
I think it's a good measure because everywhere you go is hand touching the door. You know, that is the first contact that we have with the outside world.
Even though Debbie Chen carries hand sanitizer with her everywhere, she says this coronavirus caution is a bit overblown.
My mom asked me to wear a mask, but I don't see a lot of people are wearing it. So I think it's fine because, yeah, it's not that concerning so far.
Tourism Toronto said that last year, the city actually set a record, Dwight, for the number of visitors that came to the city. It was 28 million people who spent roughly $6.7 billion. But they expect once the official numbers start to roll in, we could see a dip this year.
Thank you, Chris. As of tomorrow, schools across Italy will be closed because of concerns over the spread of coronavirus. The Prime Minister saying the move is necessary to prevent the country's healthcare system from becoming overwhelmed. Schools will stay closed until March 15th. Italy also announcing today that all sporting events will be closed to fans until early April. The country recorded nearly 600 new cases of COVID-19 today. 107 people have died from the disease in Italy. In the U.S., an $8.3 billion funding bill to fight coronavirus has passed in the House as California today confirmed its first death from COVID-19, and a 10th death has been reported in Washington state. That's where the original cases of the disease first popped up in America. Several deaths there are connected to a single long-term care facility in suburban Seattle. Today, health officials announced they are treating all residents of that center as if they have the disease.
We are planning to develop a team to make sure everyone in that facility can be tested for COVID-19, but I want the families to understand that the care that they receive is not dependent on the results of their test. It's good for us to know, but at this point, we assume that if someone is in that facility, they likely have been infected or at high risk for infection, and they're being managed as if they are.
So what are care homes here doing to protect their residents? Health reporter Christine Birak takes a look.
Here in BC, just across the border from Washington state, the warning signs are up, reminding visitors if they've traveled to a country affected by COVID-19 or feel sick, stay away. Phone lines have been set up for families seeking updates on their loved ones.
That kind of reduces the chaos. If they can't get in touch with somebody, then people start to panic because they don't know what's happening.
This is where we keep all masks. The home is fully stocked with protective gear and medical supplies.
I am reviewing all data that's coming in from all.
Dr. Rhonda Collins is the chief medical officer for a national chain of retirement homes. She says staffing is also critical. Residents are vulnerable to all kinds of illnesses, but workers are now watching for symptoms of COVID-19, high fever, dry cough, and difficulty breathing.
We are now in the pre-pandemic mode.
If there's an outbreak and care homes are locked down, plans are in place to boost the number of staff to care for patients.
If we don't have the appropriate staff to engage them in activities, recreational activities, for instance, that means more isolation, more risk of delirium.
They're very well experienced. They've been through pandemics before.
Doctors say the entire health system has learned a lot from other outbreaks.
When we had SARS, for example, if you were 65 or older and you got that illness, you actually had a 50% risk of dying.
Compare that to the death rate from this virus. It's about 8% in those aged 65 to 79 and nearly 15% in those over 80. Still, care homes and families should be doing everything they can at this point to protect seniors, from screening and hand washing to flu shots. Preventing illnesses saves lives. Christine Birak, CBC News, Oakville, Ontario.
The Bank of Canada has lowered its benchmark interest rate in response to the coronavirus fears. How that could have a big impact on the GTA's already red-hot housing market, coming up in 4 minutes. A rise in 911 calls and a shortage of ambulances has the paramedics union issuing a warning tonight.
I see firsthand the strain on the system. I can tell you it's entirely legitimate to wonder if an ambulance will be available when your child goes into anaphylaxis or your partner has a heart attack. It's not our goal to needlessly alarm people. This is why we took steps to see if the data would support our impressions on the ground, and it does.
CUPE released a report today which outlined the rising call volumes and ambulance shortages in 22 regions in the province. They say the rise in calls may be a combo of our aging population and the opioid crisis, and now potentially more COVID-19 cases. The union adds that the healthcare cuts by the province are increasing the pressure on the 5,500 paramedics and dispatchers it represents. The province says it plans to boost funding this year. Ontario's education minister is calling on the province's English Catholic teachers and some high school teachers to cancel a strike. Tomorrow, teachers are expected to walk off the job despite an announcement by Stephen Lecce that the government is backtracking on two of the most controversial changes to education. Lisa Shing has more.
The time is now. Get to the table and cancel tomorrow's strikes.
A day after announcing a dramatic reversal, Ontario's education minister called on teachers' unions to reach an agreement.
Enough with the dithering, enough with the delay.
Late yesterday, Stephen Lecce said his government is walking back increasing high school class size averages from 25, keeping them close to the status quo at 23. And it's not making online courses mandatory anymore. In question period, the Premier and opposition leader went head-to-head on that.
And we're going to continue doing everything we can to get the teachers' union to sign a deal and put an end to this nonsense.
It's this government that created the nonsense in the first place.
Now, the unions are accusing the government of bargaining in the media and say even a slight increase in class sizes still means job losses. Considering its sizable capitulation on two contentious issues, the province wants the unions to accept a 1% annual salary increase and changes to seniority-based hiring.
Every time I've made an announcement in good faith to move towards a deal, there is an impediment to progress. There's something wrong with it.
This education professor's take on the impasse.
My cynical side says the government is more interested in speaking to the public so that the public will be able to say, teachers, what's your problem? Why are you doing this? Why aren't you bargaining?
English Catholic teachers are back at the bargaining table, but they'll still join some public high school teachers in a one-day strike tomorrow. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Colette's back, but did you bring some nice weather with you?
Well, yeah, kind of. I've got some really nice weather coming in our long-range forecast. You wouldn't believe where the temperatures are going, but hey, we've been outdoing ourselves most of this winter, and today's no exception. Daytime highs running way above seasonal, not quite 5 degrees, but close to it, and St. Catharines up to 7 degrees for a daytime high. If we go in for a closer look, though, of the GTA and kind of focus on current temperatures here, you can see how we've cooled down, still quite mild in St. Catharines, but 2 degrees Toronto, Markham, and Oshawa, and we'll just see that coming down a little bit further. It's still going to be a mild overnight, but along with that, we've had some little bit of light snow. There's not a lot of moisture to work with here, and this has been kind of pushing its way through, and in many cases, you see the greens where with the milder temperatures, it's more like some showery activity or a bit of a mix and very, very wet, those flurries. That's continuing to move away from us. High pressure is building in. It means a clearing trend, at least overnight tonight, and a nice setup then for the day tomorrow, at least to start things out. So after some of those isolated flurries gone, tomorrow morning we have sunshine. We have sunshine a good portion of the day, and then clouds begin to build in. That's with the next system that will be moving in. And it's going to hold off and stay dry for the afternoon and evening commute tomorrow, not for southwestern Ontario, but for the GTA it is. However, late evening overnight, we get into some wet snow, light stuff here, even into Friday morning. We could get a bit of a dry slot that will help out with that morning commute, but wrap around into the afternoon. So we're looking at 1 to 3 centimeters of snow, nothing too significant, but closer to 5 centimeters into some parts of cottage country if you go just a bit further north. Temperature coming down to 1 degree this evening, then -3 overnight, 4 degrees, still mild tomorrow. The real warm-up's coming, Dwight. I'll have those details for you coming soon.
Thanks, Colette. Welcome back.
Thank you.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Anyone in the market for a home right now knows just how expensive things are out there. Toronto's housing prices continue to see double-digit growth. Now, add an interest rate cut to that mix. Nellie Nanowski has been following the story and joins us live now. And Nellie, a lower interest rate is good for mortgages. Does that mean, though, it's a good time to buy?
It's a perfect time to buy if you're looking outside of Toronto, outside of the greater Toronto area. But if you're looking here in the city, experts say there's going to be a lot of competition because a lot of people are thinking, hey, the Bank of Canada cut rates. That means my mortgage is going to be very manageable. But experts believe this also means that this is going to flood the market with first-time home buyers, and that's going to increase prices.
In a city where construction can't keep up with demand, experts say Toronto didn't need the extra stimulus of lower interest rates.
Cutting rates at this pace is definitely at least risking overheating the Toronto housing market.
So why did the Bank of Canada do it?
To stimulate the economy in the face of the coronavirus.
And as markets fell over the last week,
there's a need for central banks around the world to really take firm action to alleviate investor concerns.
In the last month, the Toronto Real Estate Board says the city saw double-digit growth, with condos seeing the biggest boost. In the last year, prices went up 18%. Now the average unit is about $700,000.
Condos continue to become less and less affordable for first-time home buyers. Condos have really been the starter home for first-time buyers for the last several years, so that's going to be a real challenge for that home buying segment.
So what does $700,000 get you in the city of Toronto? Come with me, I'll show you.
Right now, we're basically in the core of downtown Toronto. We're located right at the corner of King and Spadina, which is obviously, right in the heart of things. We're right now in a 1+ den corner unit.
And it comes in at 600 square feet without parking. In today's market, it would list at $700,000, but given the Bank of Canada's announcement, it will likely sell for higher.
In the 7 or less price range, we're seeing a lot of first-time home buyers, which is likely or is literally the most aggressive market. So I think we're going to see continued multiple offers, tons of bidding wars, and overall just a lot of activity on the market for buyers.
So those once affordable condos may not be so affordable anymore.
We're expecting anywhere from 100 to 150,000 people coming into the city. And with that much demand, we are faced with a supply issue. So I don't foresee things slowing down anytime soon.
Dwight, that means it's really a good time right now to be a seller. They say that the market may cool down later this year or early next year, but if the coronavirus continues, that could prompt the Bank of Canada to cut rates again, and that could throw Toronto's hot housing market for a loop.
Yeah, make it even hotter. Thank you for that, Nellie. The province's rape crisis centers will lose a government funding increase at the end of this month, and workers say that wait times could spike dramatically for people looking to get help. Last year, the Ford government announced a $1 million funding boost for Ontario's 42 centers. That's a quarter of what the previous Liberal government had promised. Toronto's Rape Crisis Center says several workers may now lose their jobs. The trial began today for one of the teens charged in the St. Michael's College School sexual assault case. The former student is one of 7 boys initially charged. He's pleading not guilty. Lorena Redekop has the latest on what happened today and a warning. Some details in this story may be disturbing to some.
The teen was 15 at the time of the alleged offenses. He pleaded not guilty today to 6 charges, including sexual assault, and sexual assault with a weapon. In court, they showed video of that weapon, a broomstick, and also a 22-second video of one of the incidents on November 7th, 2018. It was recorded on a phone inside the locker room. Police say it was circulated among the boys' football team, classified by police as child pornography. In it, you can hear yelling and cheering. Someone yells, "Get in there, get in there." "Oh my God," it's also heard. Someone calls out, "Chill, chill, chill." A broomstick is shoved up a student's backside. Faces aren't clear. The first witness was Detective Constable Daniel Sunhing with the Toronto Police Sex Crimes Unit. He points out clothing worn, sweatpants with white stripes, a white shirt. He compares them to surveillance video from the school's stairwell of students walking to and from the locker room. He identifies this accused, others whose cases have gone before the court, and the victim. Defense lawyer Gary Tomlinson objects, saying he does not concede the date and time are accurate on that stairway video. He shows data from his client's Presto card with dates and times, trying to show his client couldn't have been there. Detective Constable Sunhing responds, you can't determine who was using the card unless they were caught on video. Initially, 7 students were charged, 4 teens pleaded guilty. They were each sentenced to 2 years probation. 2 students had their charges dropped. This is the final case to go through the courts. This trial continues on April 1st. This morning, before the trial got underway, 9 teenaged boys were brought into the courtroom with their parents. They were subpoenaed by the Crown to testify next month. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead, what does $500 million get you? If you're Mike Bloomberg, a failed presidential run. The billionaire and former mayor of New York City has bowed out of the race after a disastrous Super Tuesday. Details coming up.
We're just going to put this fence up real quick and be protected. But that's just how East Nashville is.
In the darkest of days, there's brightness when we see neighbors respond.
Tennessee's governor praising the rescue and cleanup effort after deadly tornadoes tore through parts of the state early yesterday. More than 20 people were killed, and the search continues for others who are still missing. The destruction stretches for 80 kilometers across 4 counties. Nashville Mayor John Cooper provided an update this morning.
It was a tough day yesterday for Nashville. People responded so beautifully. What an incredible community we have. Now we're in the transition from yesterday's emergency to recovery. The next phase will be rebuilding. But getting recovery right is going to require information, the community working together about what we need and how to get people safety, materials, so that we can move beyond emergency to recovery.
After spending more than $500 million over a 101-day campaign, Mike Bloomberg has officially dropped out of the race to be the Democratic candidate for U.S. president. Now, the former mayor of New York City is throwing his support behind Joe Biden. Bloomberg's decision comes after winning no states on Super Tuesday. Katie Simpson picks up the story in Virginia.
It was a genuinely terrible Super Tuesday for former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. And outside one of his Virginia field offices, it's a bit of a sad scene. Take a look at this. Some of the lawn signs that had been plastered over this house that doubles as the field office, they have been sort of strewn about. It's looking a little bit disheveled. Some people have actually been coming by to take some of the lawn signs as souvenirs. Now, it was a very different scene on Monday. Michael Bloomberg actually came here, and there's proof of that. He was standing right there at that X. He came here as part of his campaign to rally the troops to try and generate some energy. But now there are obviously no signs of that energy. There's no signs of life, no one inside this campaign office, as really the team gets ready to go into cleanup mode. Michael Bloomberg decided that it was time to step aside once he really assessed those results that came in last night. There was no clear path for him to win the nomination, and so he's decided to get behind the only moderate in the race who still has a chance at clinching that nomination, and that's former Vice President Joe Biden. Joe Biden's team is welcoming that endorsement, hoping that moderates within the party are able to carry him through to that final Democratic nomination. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Manassas, Virginia.
After the break, James Bond's newest adventure gets postponed amid coronavirus fears. Plus, the latest on the controversial technology that is right out of a Bond film. It can scan any picture and identify who's in it by scraping the internet for your photos.
There may be reasons that police use this in a very good way, but that should be under judicial oversight.
Both the RCMP and Toronto Police now admit to using Clearview AI. More on the calls for a ban on its use coming up.
Name?
Bond. James Bond.
License to kill.
The debut of the newest James Bond film has been postponed due to global fears around the coronavirus. No Time to Die was supposed to be released in April, but will now premiere in November. Producers announced the change today, citing what they call a thorough evaluation of the global theatrical marketplace. The Louvre reopened today after a coronavirus scare. Staff at the famed Paris Art Museum were concerned about catching the virus, so the Louvre was closed on Sunday. After management met with employees to address their concerns, they agreed to return to work. Iran is among the countries hardest hit by COVID-19. Officials there say at least 92 people have died from the disease and about 3,000 others have been affected. But with an authoritarian government, the full extent of the outbreak in Iran isn't clear, at least not yet. Renee Filipponi has that story.
Getting a first-hand look at the situation in Iran. World Health Organization staff are now on the ground and careful not to criticize.
We are not here to evaluate the response by the Iranian government. We are still all learning about the disease. There are things every country in the world can do better right now.
But the government does face serious criticism, an open suspicion that things may be worse than Iran admits.
The capital, Tehran, has turned into a ghost town. People are not traveling anymore, are not buying, are not eating out.
This Tehran-based journalist says he thinks the number of cases is higher than reported, and the government doesn't want to appear weak.
Everybody is to blame here, including the government. They took the situation very lightly in the beginning, and now they have woken up and smelled the coffee that, yes, this is a serious problem because each and every country on this planet of ours has been affected.
The Iranian president blames U.S. sanctions for keeping medical supplies out of reach. The regime is now taking drastic measures, making the rare decision to cancel Friday prayers, even releasing more than 50,000 prisoners to stop the spread in jails.
In coordination, it's very much not under control.
Masa Al-Mardani studies Iran for a human rights group. She says getting people to take steps to fight the virus is hard when they simply don't trust the government.
In some ways it's justified, but in other ways it adds to the furthering of this kind of crisis in people, not following orders.
Medical workers, in defiance of the government's response, share videos on social media. An effort to find some light amid the dark reality that Iran is now in. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, London.
Remember, you can find the very latest on the coronavirus outbreak here and around the world online. Just head to our website, cbcnews.ca. Kaylan Slater's first-degree murder trial in the death of Tess Ritchie resumed today, with Slater's lawyer cross-examining a key Crown witness. The jailhouse informant who shared a cell with Slater was back in the witness box today. Now, yesterday, the man told the jury that Slater confessed to strangling Ritchie with a scarf when she refused his advances. Earlier in the trial, the court was shown security footage of Slater and Ritchie walking together in the area where her body was later found. The video also shows Slater walking alone in the same area. Jurors were also shown video of Slater in a police holding cell on the night he was charged in Ritchie's murder. Tess Ritchie was found dead in a stairwell in the village in November 2017. It's expected the Crown could finish up its part of the case tomorrow. Pressure is mounting on the federal government to get police to stop using a controversial facial recognition technology. Clearview AI harvests personal information from billions of photos posted on social media. After initially denying it, the RCMP now acknowledges it has been using the technology for months. Catherine Tunney has the details.
Questions about the ethics of Clearview AI erupted earlier this year, following reports detailing how much information the company has and how it can easily track down people's names and numbers and their occupation just based on a photo, and how they've been offering those services to police agencies in Canada and the US. Now, earlier this year, CBC reached out to the RCMP to ask, have they been using facial recognition technology? And a spokesperson wrote back on January 17th saying, quote, the RCMP does not currently use facial recognition software. Well, now the force is saying something different. Last week, it put out a statement saying that it has been using Clearview AI for at least 4 months. And it should be noted, it put out a statement following news that the company's client list had been hacked. Now, NDP MP Charlie Angus says he's concerned about the way the RCMP misrepresented their use of the technology. He's also asking the Liberal government to put out a temporary ban on police forces using this technology until firmer guidelines are established.
There may be reasons that police use this in a very good way, but that should be under judicial oversight. And we need to know what the ground rules are. If there's a serious predator that they're trying to track and there's a photograph that may help, that could be a very useful police tool.
The RCMP has not responded to CBC's repeated requests for comment on why they initially denied using this technology. Catherine Tunney, CBC News, Ottawa.
Toronto police are investigating after 2 collision reporting centers were vandalized overnight.
What they did was smash the windows, step inside, poured gasoline on the carpet, set it on fire, and then fled the scene.
You can see the damage to the reporting center on Howden Road in the Birchmount and Lawrence area. The fire was contained to the lobby area and there were no injuries. On the other side of the city near Weston Road and Finch, another reporting center was also vandalized. Police are going through surveillance video to try to identify the suspects. There was a CN train derailment today in eastern Ontario. It happened in Kingston just before noon. Several freight cars jumped the tracks on a spur line connected to the main rail route. The city says a food-grade product spilled onto the tracks and that it was confined to one area. There were no injuries or fires associated with the incident. The federation representing Quebec's provincial police force says military intervention may be needed to bring down a barricade on a commuter rail line. The blockade at Ganawage, south of Montreal, has been in place since early February. The Mohawk peacekeepers who police the area say they will not enforce a court injunction there. That's fraying tempers, but the Prime Minister insists dialogue, not the army, is the solution.
It is really important that we settle this issue of blockades in a peaceful manner, in a way that will be lasting. We do not want to see these problems continuing to jump up every few months in the coming years. I do not think it is ever appropriate to send the military against Canadian citizens.
The Mohawk blockade came as a show of support for Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs fighting for recognition of their territorial rights in BC. Those BC chiefs met with federal and provincial ministers and are now consulting their own members about a way forward. A Micmac blockade remains in place in Quebec's Gaspé Peninsula. Tim Hortons is going digital with the Roll Up the Rim this year, but its app is already disappointing some customers.
They're leaving people hanging high and dry and seem to not care at all.
The coffee chain is now apologizing to thousands of users after an app update wiped out funds they had loaded onto it. The latest on that story next. Plenty of Canadians love their Tim Hortons, but 20,000 of them are definitely not in love with the Coffee Change new mobile app. They loaded funds onto the app, but the money disappeared from the screen. As Yvonne Colbert reports, the company has admitted to a glitch and apologized for being slow to respond to affected customers.
Fredericton resident Jerry Clark makes his Tim Hortons coffee at home these days. He was a loyal Tim's customer and liked the convenience of using the app until he got the latest version and it didn't work. Then he lost the money he'd loaded. That was early January.
At this point in time, they still had over $20 of my money locked into this app that they weren't allowing me to access.
Clark was equally frustrated trying to get the company to respond to his inquiries.
But I would like to have an explanation as to what happened and why, and I think it's unconscionable on Tim Hortons' part to continue to promote an app that they blatantly know is not working properly, is taking people's money, and is not giving them the rewards that they're anticipating.
Tim Hortons maintains Clark used the money, but he's not the only one with this problem. The company confirmed that between December and February, approximately 20,000 customers have complained about the new app. It's apologized for the lack of response.
Our job is customer service, and we did fall down there, and for that we do apologize to our guests who did call back, and it was not a level of service that our guests deserve.
Tim Hortons says those balances that disappeared were really always there. App users just couldn't see them. It says it's now transferred those balances from the old app to the new app, and people can now access their funds. This just as they get ready for next week's launch of Roll Up the Rim to Win, which will rely heavily on the app. Yvonne Colbert, CBC News, Halifax.
It was a nice one out there today, Colette.
Yeah, hey, hard to complain. A little bit of light snow, just a little bit there late in the day. But again, temperatures above seasonal. And we're talking about seeing some temperatures way above seasonal coming up. But nice day for tomorrow to start the day off. That arrow means increasing clouds. So we'll be changing as the day wears on. Thursday evening then and overnight into Friday, we have some mixed precipitation coming through, mostly a little bit of light, wet snow. But coming soon, we're talking about temperatures that are going to be highs in the double digits. So let me show you that in a moment, but I'm going to start off with a look at what your current temperatures are doing. Still sitting in, we're hanging in there, 2 degrees. 2 degrees in Oshawa, Peterborough at 1, Hamilton right at the freezing mark, and a little bit mild too there in Hamilton where you're still looking at 2 degrees. So as that precipitation came through, very light in nature, as I say, but that's why it was so kind of wet as well, and at times even seeing some of a mix, especially the further south you get around the Golden Horseshoe. And that is moving away, and high pressure is going to be sneaking in overnight, so it means we'll be seeing clearing skies so that by tomorrow morning your commute will be a dry one. It will be one as the sun comes up. You'll need your sunglasses too, depending what direction you're going in, because we'll have quite a bit of sun to start the day, and then the clouds coming in. Here are the afternoon hours. You see how they're thickening up. The main system and the precipitation with it is still well back to the southwest of us. So late afternoon, early evening, that'll move through Windsor, eventually London area, and then late evening it's going to come into the GTA. Now, mostly it's going to be a little bit of light, wet snow, so it looks like the accumulation should be negligible. On the backside, just know that Friday during the day, we'll still see a little bit of light snow coming back at us. In terms of what I mean by negligible, now up towards Barrie into Cottage Country, 5-6 degrees possible. Elsewhere, we're looking at a couple of centimeters, maybe 3. I want to point something interesting out to you, though. I've actually put 2 models on here. So if I remove the numbers, I'm taking off the American model. This is the Canadian one, the contour here. And if you look at what it wants to do, it does want to put this little swath, some heavier snow in here. What I'm thinking and what my forecast is, there'll be, just as we get into some of the higher elevations, there will be locally some heavier amounts, but I still think we'll be on the lighter side into Toronto. But really interesting to see that. It looks like the other model is holding on and kind of handling the system a little bit better. Overnight tonight, there are your lows. This time of year, we should be at about -7, so even the overnight lows still mild. Tomorrow, we should be around 1.5, and these are what our highs are going to look like. So pretty decent day until that system gets here. Cools us down into Friday. We go back to seasonal just about Clock forward on the weekend and then have a look at the temperatures. So you lose an hour with it going forward to white, but you get to pick up some really mild air. That's your change off.
My eyes aren't that good anymore. Is that a double digit for Monday?
This is a 10.
All right.
It is an actual double digit, not on the negative side, Dwight.
Wow, thanks, Colette.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This weather update is brought to you by Fairmont Le Chateau Frontenac, the best location for your next spring break getaway in Quebec City.
After the break, we introduce you to a true community champion.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tuesday night, and here I am doing what I do best, rescuing food.
Meet the man behind what he calls Canada's first barrier-free food waste diversion program, how it works, and how it's helping. Coming up next. At the age of 44, a Toronto man found himself without a job and wondering where his next meal would come from. A few years later, Tony Colley was back on his feet. Santa Troy followed him around to see how his hard times inspired a new program.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tuesday night, and here I am doing what I do best, rescuing food. My second rescue of the week. That's another 30 pounds of food. This is about 70 pounds of food. Well, this is 90 pounds of awesome food. This one was roughly 50 pounds of food. Just to give you a little BTS of what's going on right now, CBC is here filming me doing basically a Be One to Give day in the life kind of story, which is super awesome.
It's Canada's first barrier-free food waste diversion program because we pick up and we drop off. We are the only one that operates similar to an Uber Eats style delivery platform, where we pick up and everything that we collect over the course of an hour is dropped off at the end of that hour. The prepared food doesn't have to go in the garbage. It just doesn't. Like,
was that a text that
was a
just came
text,
in?
yeah.
What does it say?
It says Food Dudes 10. So that means Food Dudes have used 10 labels. That could probably feed 60, 70 people maybe. Typically I use the subway to cut down on carbon emissions, but in this case, we're going to have to use a vehicle to take it over, to pick it up from Food Dudes and take it over to the shelter. good to go. Like my resume, I was in banking for 16 years and I worked in the nonprofit sector and I was producing events for 20 years on the weekend. So I wasn't expecting to ever work in food services in general. And I had to sort of swallow my pride because everyone knew me as Tall Tony, who was this local, dare I say celebrity, but more of a nightlife persona. Having people treat you disrespectfully was just not what I was accustomed to. It was jarring, to say the least, but humbling at the same time. You know, seeing the amount of food that we were throwing out on a regular basis, and we are just one catering company. So rescuing what I could was great, but then eventually, having done this for a while and having other chefs recognize and other managers recognize what I was doing, I started getting calls and text messages saying, I'm at an event and a client wants to donate the food, where can I take it or where can they take it? So that was something that it kind of triggered, wow, like I'm actually changing behaviors within a very successful, well, Canada's largest catering company.
Bring you to rest.
All right, awesome. So for the gram, I always take a picture. I want to make sure that everybody sees that one, we're rescuing food, and two, how much we're rescuing, so that when we're doing our posts and we're sharing it on social media, we're able to show exactly what our impact is on a regular basis. Literally per pickup. So everything is labeled, identifies what it is. That's one thing that I learned going and rescuing food and delivering it to a shelter, is that one of the shelter's users asked me, is any of this food gluten-free or vegetarian? And I was a bit surprised by that because my attitude was, it's free food. Why are you asking me about food intolerances? But right away she said a lot of our users are vegetarians and some of them have food intolerances. So we need to make sure that the food that they're eating is actually safe for them to eat, which is why these labels came into play, because now I'm able to identify easily what it is that's in the container, so they don't have to worry about, whether somebody's eating improper food. Like the feeling of knowing that you're going in and you're providing resources to people, they're not expecting it, and then all of a sudden you show up with food for, let's say, 60 people. For them, it's a win-win for everybody. We've rescued, maybe 100 pounds of food. We're feeding people that they would not normally have food for that night, and we're doing it unexpectedly for them. So everything's identified. If you ever have any questions, the phone number's there. If you want to call, but everything is labeled, everything's identified, and there's...
This looks really amazing. This is so good.
It's very humbling when you see gratitude from others that are suffering in ways that you've experienced yourself. They're still in it. I'm not in it anymore, but I still want to continue to do my part. I started this when I was food insecure and was on social assistance.
So
I'm no longer on social assistance and I'm no longer food insecure, but I still have the capacity and the drive to do this and continually rescue this food. There's always going to be food waste, so there's always going to be food to rescue.
Yeah, great program. To learn more about how Tony Colley's hunger hardships led him to start Be One to Give, head to our website, cbc.ca/Toronto, to read his story. After the break, now some may call them rats with wings. This man has a very different viewpoint.
They can be big and clean and healthy. Every animal that we've had has had a name, and I think it really, you have to be able to look your food in the face.
Okay, then he's chopping pigeons, raising them, and then making them part of his dinner. That story, next. To many people, pigeons are thought of as pests, not pets. Some refer to them as dirty birds. They're even been called flying rats. But a man in Calgary says he's catching and raising those birds as pets, and they've also become a delicious part of his diet. Take a look.
We have about 16 birds now. So what we do is we catch them out in the wild, and then we bring them back to the coop.
I catch them with a fishing net, $80 fishing net from Walmart. And what we do is we scare them out with a laser or a piece of dowel or a piece of PVC pipe, and they just pour out, and you just stand here with a net and you catch them and put them into a bin.
And we bring them back to the coop and feed them so they can be big and clean and healthy. Every animal that we've had has had a name, and I think you have to be able to look your food in the face. And so I try and give them a high quality life. It's optimal food, optimal environment, optimal circumstances. Generally speaking, you're going to know the moment you got the bird if he's not healthy, if he or she are not healthy. You'll see bruises or issues around the breast. You'll see issues with the skin where it's darkening in areas where it shouldn't be, stuff like that. In Calgary especially, you can't use like an air rifle or a gun inside the city. Trapping is usually the safest way to go about it. If you consume them for yourself, that's fine, but they would never license us to be able to sell game meat because there's provincial regulations on that for one, and for two, they won't allow you to breed livestock for sale. But you can keep pigeons for personal consumption because they're not considered a livestock animal, they're considered a pest. The stigma of them being a dirty animal, that's the biggest thing, but I mean, it makes sense to try and find other ways where you can help participate, in saving the planet while still eating the things that you like. I hope to actually be expanding the coop. If I can have 100 birds, I would have enough food to make up the difference of, say, 1.5 white-tailed deer if I was hunting deer.
Oh, Colette.
I'm trying to keep an open mind.
I don't think you could call them pets if you plan to eat them at the end, even if you name them. I'm just saying.
Yeah, when my mom was a kid, she has 5 siblings. They had a pet pig, Katrinka. One day, Katrinka got taken away by their dad. And I'm telling you, devastation.
Sorry.
Pet or food? No.
Got to make a line of demarcation, make that distinction.
What he's trying to do, but
all right, we got a few seconds left to fill us in on what's up for tomorrow.
Okay, so we are looking at much of the day being very nice. In fact, we'll have sunshine to start off. It's tomorrow late evening and overnight into Friday that we get into a messy mix, mostly a bit of light wet snow. So say 1 to 3 centimeters or so by the time we're done Friday.
Double digits for Monday.
Yes.
We'll see you back here tomorrow, everybody. Have a great night.